समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
The Election Commission, the response to the complaints of leader of opposition, personally is not acceptable to me. Because he is not a man in the street, he is a leader of opposition of the country, the biggest democracy in the world. What is this affidavit business is very childish. And even the body language, your election commission has no business to look angry, at least publicly.
So you're saying when Mr. Ganesh Kumar responded to Rahul Gandhi's press conference by saying, submit the affidavit or apologize,
Yes.
he was out of line? Quraishi Saab, looking at the turmoil in Nepal, it is quite curious that your new book is actually still I would say, a statement of belief in the democratic project in South Asia. I'm holding it in my hand, Democracy's Heartland, inside the battle for power in South Asia. Let's start with Nepal. Because everywhere we look, it seems there are fires burning in South Asia. Before we come to the specifics of Nepal, when you look at Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Pakistan, of course, where the army is effectively in control, Afghanistan, where the Taliban is in control, why do you still believe in South Asia as a democratic project?
Yeah, let me tell you two things. First of all, on a lighter note, I'm not responsible for what is happening in Nepal. Of course,
Yes.
because of Nepal, the people have got interested in my book.
Yeah.
So, to that extent, I'm a beneficiary of what is happening. And when I called the book Democracy's Heartland, it was more in the context of a fact which not many people know, that 8 countries of South Asia, out of 203, have 25% of world's population, and 40% of world's democracy lives in these 8 countries. So with virtually half the democracy of the world in these 8 countries, how much interest international organization, UN and others have? Negligible, almost zero.
Okay.
So that is one thing which I have tried to point out, that this is actually democracy's heartland, and it deserves more academic attention, professional attention and all that.
I think somewhere you said 40% of
World democratic
voters now are South Asian.
Yes, exactly. So, and second thing was that I have, I used to go for lectures or here, there, in London or America, every university virtually has a South India division, South Asia division.
Yeah.
And they have lots of conferences in South Asia, but 99% of the time it is about India.
Yeah.
And I've heard other countries murmur gently, normally, that we are also South Asia. Nobody talks about us. South Asia, India should not hog the entire limelight, which I thought was a great point. So these were the two provocations when I started. And I have argued that all the 8 countries are very vibrant democracies in various ways, and there are so many takeaways for all of us from each other.
You say this, many of these countries are vibrant democracies. If I were to look at Nepal, where, of course, you have a personal connection. You were married to somebody who was not just from Nepal, but who was worked in the election commission.
She was the election commissioner.
She was the election commissioner. And she passed tragically, so our condolences. But when you look at what's happening in Nepal, mass uprising on the streets that then again gets somewhat hijacked, at least that's what the young Nepalese people I've been speaking to say to me, which then leads to mass carnage. Do you still believe, in democracy for Nepal? How do you look at what's happening in Nepal?
That is a myth which I would like to explore. That what happened in Nepal is not destruction of democracy, but assertion of democracy.
Started as that.
Yes,
started as that, but then went out of hand.
It went out of hand for 2 days for a very good reason. because the kind of instability we have had in Nepal, 5 prime ministers in 5 years, and 7 constitutions have changed in the last 50, 70 years. So the political instability and the corruption, a lot of corruption, people were very discontented, no doubt. It was bound to explode someday, and the time came now. And another point which comes out is the power of the social media.
Yes.
Now, the ban on social media, I think the government was well-intentioned in imposing the ban, because all these the platforms were not accepting the discipline of Nepal government, and the Nepal government wanted them to set up their offices in Kathmandu so that they can control them. Control means whatever way. So they refused. So as a result, they were all banned, not realizing social media has become so much a part of life of Nepal, because 10% of Nepalese live abroad, on remittances, and their only connection is social media.
Yeah.
Suddenly they were cut off what was happening in the family, here, there, anywhere. So that anger led to this spark.
I agree with you that I think it was an assertion of democracy, at least to begin with, because the young people that I have been interviewing, they said that the reason that they were so angry about social media was not only for the sake of social media, but because they were using the social media to expose those in power.
Yes.
For example, a very, very viral video of the children of those in power showing how, while ordinary people were suffering, all the elites were enjoying the benefits of a wealthy life, often living abroad. And they felt that their capacity for truth-telling had been taken away from them. But the fact that, we saw the kind of bloodshed that we did, when you saw those images, politicians running to escape by chopper, buildings being set on fire, the parliament ablaze, Hilton Hotel ablaze, the Supreme Court, in danger. What did you think? You know Nepal so well.
No, Barkha, you brought out a very good point that social media, I had earlier said that the ban on social media could have been well-intentioned, only to regulate them. But where perhaps the need to regulate also came from the content of the social media. The way they were arousing sentiments, and maybe the government wanted to control that kind of narrative and discourse. So, and therefore the anger was building up, as you rightly said. So, when youth and the public get annoyed, all it needs is a spark, which is what happened. And I think there is a lesson for everyone, including India.
What is the lesson?
Lesson is that, you have to be aware and conscious of the public mood and public sentiment. I mean, you can't bulldoze...
India, when it looked at... a lot of Indians on social media, when they looked at Nepal, the feeling was, pehle Bangladesh, ab Nepal, Sri Lanka, that somewhere with all our faults, and we are not without faults, we are not a perfect democracy, with all our imperfections, there is something about this country where the center still holds. Kuch isko ekjut karke rakhta hai. There is a stability in our democracy. When you say there is a lesson in it for all of us, including India, what is that lesson?
No, the lesson is that, we have to be conscious of the public opinion and public sentiment.
That it can't be disregarded.
It cannot be disregarded at all. And secondly, the tendency in every country, including India, to control the social media. Mind you, the resentment started, the spark was the banning of the social media.
The control over thoughts.
Now, we have seen in Kashmir how for 6 months, 1 year, there is a total ban, they are disconnected from the world. So, and it's not that they were spreading politics or hatred. They wanted to be in touch with their relatives all over. So, the fact that we have been imposing ban at the drop of a hat is a lesson for us.
So, sometimes it is argued, let me argue it sometimes from the other side. Sometimes it is argued that in precarious security situations, you need a ban on social media. This is what security agencies say every time people like us say, "Bhai, aap ye kyun karte ho?" They say that, one spark, one piece of fake news can lead to unrest. And therefore, social media will always be a double-edged sword.
Yes.
What do you say about that?
No, absolutely. It is a double-edged sword. But the fake news is not originating from only the critics of the government. It is also originating from the supporters of the government. Therefore, to blame only the opposition and the others.
No, I'm making a general.
No, I'm not
yeah.
saying that you're blaming.
Yeah, yeah.
Anybody blaming that. So that's not correct. The fact is that it is double-edged, no doubt. Within 30 seconds, the country can be inflamed if there is an inflammatory post there. So some regulation is all required, but it has to be legitimate, well-intentioned, and not with the intention to strangulate. And I would like to point out that the need for social media freedom is more than ever before, when the mainstream media has been totally controlled. They never criticize, they never don't do any story on things which people are curious to know. Their silence has made social media more relevant than ever before.
Let's talk a little bit specifically about Nepal. You call it an assertion of democracy.
Yeah.
And does it still make you feel that you believe in the democratic project for Nepal?
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm happy, within 2 days things settled down. Also, unlike Pakistan or Bangladesh,
where they the
army could have chosen to step in and assume power, and once they take power, they get used to it, they never give up. The fact that they brought in democracy, and I've met the Prime Minister who took oath yesterday, only 3 months ago.
Yeah.
Had a long 1 hour.
And she has an India connection. She's actually a graduate, I was reading, of BHU.
Yes, and I had a long 1 hour chat with her. She is a very nice and clean lady who always fought against corruption. And the fact that these young people, instead of choosing one of their leaders, that means they were not after leadership.
Yeah.
They chose Karki.
In fact, one of the young people from Nepal I was interviewing, and I said, oh, it was because of social media. She said, no, it was about corruption, and social media was our tool to expose that corruption.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you.
So when we zoom out and we look at South Asia, which is, of course, the focus of your book, it seems as if so much of South Asia is inflammable. कि एक matches से ये पूरा forest fire शुरू हो सकता है.
Yes.
Bangladesh, you have a whole chapter on Bangladesh in your book. Sheikh Hasina is still in India. We all seem to have forgotten that she's right here. And this doesn't seem to be necessarily any sort of structural improvement. We have an election date, but that's all we have. There's also the fear of religious radicalism, and this is a theme you explore in your book, which you call a constitutional contradiction. That on the one hand, there is a desire for constitutional freedoms, for constitutional structures. On the other hand, there is a rise of religious sentiment everywhere, in Nepal, in Bangladesh, in sections of India, in Pakistan. So let's look at Bangladesh.
Yes. I had gone to Bangladesh 1 month before the election, and I had a long meeting with Sheikh Hasina, which was my second meeting. Earlier also I had met her, and she spent 1.5 hours. She was there with the entire team, and I was there alone with my High Commissioner, Pankaj Saran. So, and it was meant to be a courtesy call. And in fact, the Bangladesh High Commissioner then said, since you're going to Bangladesh, and if you're going to call on Sheikh Hasina, please tell her the importance of in neutral and independent election commission and free and fair election. And which is what I tried to do. And she defended, there was, I had introduced the system of shortlisting of candidates, and I have continued that. And from that shortlist I make of 5 people, and then the president chooses and all that. So I tried to make my point and convince her that neutrality of election commission is important for your own legitimacy. Now this time she made a very interesting remark. She said that America is trying for regime change, and they have been forcing me to be friendly with Khaleda Zia. And then she made a very interesting statement. She said, the day I see Trump and Biden shaking hands, I'll go and embrace Khaleda Zia. So, which is very true, because that...
but this regime change conspiracy theory is a persistent one. Even in Nepal, Bangladesh, there is a sense that the American hand, people say that. There are economists like Jeffrey Sachs who says that. Do you believe that there is a larger hand, a foreign hand here?
No, in Bangladesh, definitely. I have no doubt that there was foreign hand.
American hand.
American hand, because this guy, the current Mohammed Yunus, was very close to Hillary Clinton. And he has been a donor to their foundation also. So there is no doubt that America was looking for it for a long time and they found it. But I don't think in Nepal there was any foreign hand. If at all, people can suspect, usual suspect India that maybe we did it because Oli was pro-China, which also is not true because it was genuine anger against corruption.
Yeah.
So, but the fact that, in fact, if even for regime change, if the Western world gets interested in South Asia, I'll be happy. I want them to take interest in South Asia. I don't like their indifference because, there is so much of a stake for the world. 40% of democracy.
But let's come back to Sheikh Hasina. So
Yes.
you met her. She told you that the Americans are trying to do this. And then she topples.
Yes.
She flees and she comes here.
Yes.
But what was presented again at that time as a popular uprising and an interim government, they seem to cling on to power much longer than they were meant to.
It happens.
Are you concerned?
Yeah, I'm concerned because it happens because every interim government, anybody who comes to power doesn't want to give it up. So, and for one reason or the other, they'll keep on postponing the election. But coming back to Sheikh Hasina, under Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh developed a lot. Its development indicators shot up. In fact, in many indicators, it overtook India. And in fact, there used to be this light-hearted comment that there used to be immigration from Bangladesh into India before in search of livelihood. But now that they are doing better in many economic indicators, there may be a reverse migration. Lighter vein, but very significant. So only thing that went wrong with her was she became too authoritarian. Now that is another lesson for everybody, including India. That authoritarianism, because like a pressure cooker, there is that safety valve, and if you seal it because it is disturbing you, the noise is disturbing you. If you seal it, it will only blow up. So her authoritarian tendency, because of prolonged power, became her undoing, and resentment started brewing. And although personally we feel for India it's a loss, she was very pro-India. She kept India, Bangladesh free from terrorists because it could have become a terror hub. But the fact she was really very, very helpful to India, good for India. And I'm glad that we have reciprocated by giving her refuge here, and we'll continue to look after her.
Give us an overview of the other countries in the region before I come to some of the main themes of your book. You've already said control of media eventually catches up, people need a release. Authoritarian streaks sooner or later face pushback. But there is if you look at Sri Lanka, but then you look at Pakistan, Afghanistan, there isn't, even sometimes when there are elections, it doesn't necessarily mean that those are the people wielding power. Pakistan is a clear example of this, where the Pakistani military has figured out a different formula. Coups are not necessary anymore. You can have civilians, elected civilians, and yet you can make sure that they're entirely emasculated governments. So how do you understand the democracy project in the context of a country like Pakistan?
Well, democracy in Pakistan has always been in peril. I was an election observer in 2018, which brought in Imran Khan. And it was a Commonwealth delegation. About 18 people. Then we went to different parts of Pakistan. So we found the election to be free and fair. To the extent we saw, I went to about 110 booths, and the first thing I do in my observation tour is to talk to the candidates' agents sitting there, because they are the first to complain. I asked them which party they represented, and if they had any complaints, they said, no, it's all going on fine. And later on, because some people criticized me for giving them a clean sheet, because in fact, the Indian Express heading was what I saw in Pakistan. I only wrote what I saw. So, and number one, that they gave clean sheet. Secondly, they have a civil society organization, something like ADR, but in fact more hands-on. 33,000 observers were posted all over the country, and their Secretary General or the Chairman, in a press conference which I attended, European Union, Commonwealth delegation, we all attended, gave a clean sheet that we got no complaint from any of the polling stations. So after that, because some Indian sentiment is that Pakistan only has to be painted black, because we saw a clean, Commonwealth delegation gave a clean sheet, European delegation had some questions, with minor questions, but they gave a clean sheet. So, but at the same time, it was writ large that army is controlling, and there were very interesting names given to them, establishment and Ghaib Ki Awaaz, Voice of God. Some said Department of Agriculture. so because they don't want to use the word army because army gets annoyed. But there were other.
So how do we understand democracy in Pakistan? It seems to be a country in perennial pursuit of democracy, with a structural stranglehold of the military,
Yes.
which is so deep.
Yes.
You know.
But on the positive side, you will notice that this is the third consecutive popularly elected government.
Yes.
Otherwise, no elected government.
But it's an elected government without power.
That's right. But at least, earlier, elected regime could complete its term. There would be a takeover. At least for the last 3 elections, the transition from one elected government to the other has been happening. With, of course, very limited powers, no doubt about that. And in fact, the current army chief is more powerful than even previous army chiefs. He is virtually ruling and publicly, and you can see the Shahbaz Sharif's body language in front of him, So that unfortunately is true, and that should be a lesson for all the countries, because once Nepal almost came from the brink. If this army chief had chosen to become the ruler, nobody would have been able to stop him. But fortunately, he's a good guy, he did not do it. And I believe that India also played a role in
calming
things down, because it is in India's interest to have a very calm neighborhood. So they did that. But the lesson for all countries is that if you do not behave, if you are corrupt, and you are not responsive to people's needs and aspirations and protests, the dangerous consequences can follow. And now you mentioned Sri Lanka. I was an election observer there also, at least, particularly in 2015, when the revolution took place, the dictator Mahinda Rajapaksa fell. It was a very interesting election. I was leading a delegation of 23 Asian countries, and we went all over. The chief election commissioner, although he was the government department at that time, Mahinda Deshapriya, fantastic man, our dear colleague, we have a meeting all the time. So he almost begged me, sir, you must visit all the northern districts because people are planning, there was a boycott call from the Tamils there. So, and please convince them that we are there, we promise to hold an honest election. I traveled about 1,200 kilometers in 3.5-4 days and went to every district, and surely I had meeting with those leaders. And I said, look, I'm here, I'm watching for their good intentions. The election commission is nice. And the fact that every presiding officer in those areas is a Tamil or is an Indian origin person, also a guarantee. And then there were, of course, rumors, as they always are everywhere, that, army stopping the convoy. We didn't come across any army in the barricade anywhere. So all these untruths were, when we shared with those people, they came out in large numbers. And in fact, their vote brought in the revolutionary result that finally Sri Lanka had. By the way, interestingly, we met Mahinda Deshapriya. And he directly blamed India. He says, I have lost to RAW. He said that to me, and
how did you respond?
No, we were taken aback.
Of course.
So, and 5 years later, I went again in 2020, and we went to see him. And I said, okay, what do you feel about India now? Then with a wink, he said, okay, no, now they are all right.
So when you lose, it's always easy to blame blame an external hand. Talk a little bit about India. When we look at this neighborhood, like I said, a volatile neighborhood, and you look at India, I remember once Prime Minister Modi had referenced democracy in India being older than the Magna Carta. And you had written a column and you had said it is true that there is a sort of civilizational root of democracy here.
Yes.
I want you to talk a little bit about it.
In my book, earlier book, An Undocumented Wonder, Making of the Great Indian Election, which has actually done very well. Its 7th edition has just now come. Imagine a non-fiction book going into 7th edition. So that has been a very, very useful book, in which I did mention how we used to have. You are a student of history, are you not?
Literature. Yeah.
But I did history from the same college.
Yes.
And the fact that there were village republics in Bihar 3,000 years ago, and I have mentioned the Chola dynasty over 1,000 years ago, and I was reading and I reproduced in that book that they have model code of conduct.
Really?
10 times superior to our current model code of conduct. And in fact, how much they've talked of nepotism. They've described what the degree of relationship will amount to nepotism.
Conflict of interest,
Conflict of nepotism, corruption, everything. It is brilliant. 1,000 years ago. So, which is older than Magna Carta. So, which is why I wrote an article supporting, and Mr. Modi had made this call that India is the mother of republics, democracy in the world, and I strongly agree with him.
And I have questions about some of the current questions in India, but one more question on the book. I had marked a page in this book where you talk about constitutional contradictions. And you say that, there are countries in pursuit of secularism, in pursuit of pluralism. India, of course, but you also give Nepal as an example. And there are other countries also where this tussle is ongoing, where there is an assertion of religious identity. And the dominant religion of each of these countries is looking to assert itself. And sometimes that will come in clash with the constitutional principles that the country has set for itself. And you have spoken about this as one of the major challenges for democracy in South Asia. So I want you to talk about this.
Yeah. All these countries have a constitution, and as you say, the constitutions are generally all well-intentioned. But in practice, as Ambedkar has said, even the best of constitution will be destructive in the wrong hands.
Yes.
So similarly, that is what is happening all over. But there are certain countries which are declared Islamic Republic, like Pakistan. Bangladesh continued to be a secular country. So, and
well, in name. Now we have to see how.
Now the recent development.
Because I was just reading, I think Shashi Tharoor had shared how the Jamaat has just won the elections in Dhaka University.
Yes, personally I feel these happenings in Bangladesh are very unfortunate. How can they forget the atrocities of 1971? How can they allow Pakistan hand to now dominate, and they started interfering? It is beyond my comprehension. Why is it being allowed? So, but that's the fact. So, but we had a friendly government there. Is it our intelligence failure that we did not know that this was brewing? We should have done something, because the kind of hand-holding we have been doing, it was in our interest to have a secular and pro-India government in Bangladesh. So, why those forces were weakened by the opposition and the hostile people? Of course, when there is a big hand of the biggest brother in the world,
which is the Americans.
So it is.
But let's come to this religious majoritarianism vis-a-vis or versus sometimes constitutional principles. How do countries resolve these questions for themselves, especially when often the democratic process itself will lead to parties that believe in that majoritarianism, right? So if we believe in the right of a free and fair vote, this is one of the contradictions of democracy, that it isn't just about who wins the election. It's also about safeguarding inclusion.
Yeah, but let me tell you, constitution doesn't mean secularism.
No.
Constitution can be anything. And in fact, in Pakistan constitution, there is a Sharia council which can overrule any legislation. There is a Sharia court which can throw out any legislation passed. So it is constitution, it is within their constitution.
That allows this.
That allows it. Yes.
So constitutional does not necessarily equal democracy.
Not, democracy, but there
are kinds and kinds of democracy.
Kinds and kinds of democracy.
So let's pull out and talk about our country. Now, in our country, where we pride ourselves on the vote being the most egalitarian, principle, and we've always had an equal vote for everybody since the inception of India as an independent nation, we are today in a fierce battle public battle. Hopefully, it's just a political battle and it'll end with election season. But we are seeing an unprecedented fight between the Election Commission and the leader of the opposition. Almost down to a sort of tu me level, where Mr. Ganesh Kumar had a very assertive, aggressive press conference, and Rahul Gandhi continues to use the word chor when he talks about the Election Commission and vote chori, theft of votes. How do you see this spat?
Well, politicians always resort to political rhetoric and strong language, and from time immemorial, we also witnessed it. But we used to take it lightly because we did not take it too seriously, because we say there's only.
So you would not rise to the bait.
Yeah, because to arouse public opinion, that is what they say. But at the same time, the Election Commission's response to the complaints of leader of opposition personally is not acceptable to me, because he is not a man in the street. He is a leader of opposition of the country, the biggest democracy in the world, and he is representing the voice of millions of people. If he makes a complaint, the natural response would have been, look, we will examine it, we'll go make an inquiry and get back to you. Instead of saying, oh, you make the complaint and you have to give an affidavit and within 7 days. What if they turn around and say, look, we will accept your electoral roll, you give an affidavit that it is mistake free, and if there is a mistake, you will own responsibility. No, what is this affidavit business? Is very childish. And even the body language, your Election Commission has no business to look angry, at least publicly.
So you're saying when Mr. Ganesh Kumar responded to Rahul Gandhi's press conference by saying, submit the affidavit or apologize, he was out of line?
Yes, he was out of line, and in fact his body language has not done him great favor, let me tell you. In our time also, this topic, people criticizing the Election Commission used to come. And very many times the suggestion came that we should be given power of contempt of court. Specifically, even in my time, I said, no, we do not want contempt of court, because we don't want to hide against this kind of a protective wall. We have enough backbone, we have enough moral courage. People have a right to criticize us on a daily basis, and we have a responsibility to answer them satisfactorily to their satisfaction and to satisfaction of the nation.
So what you're saying is that even if Mr. Gandhi's language has been intemperate in moments, the Election Commission cannot talk like a politician.
Exactly. You summed it up very, very well. Yeah, because Election Commission has to carry everybody along. It is the Election Commission of India, not of a particular segment of...
What would you have done had you been Chief Election Commissioner when Rahul Gandhi, as leader of opposition, had the same press conference?
No, first of all, for the last 3-4 years, you notice that the opposition leaders seek appointment and they are not given an appointment. And you remember 2 years ago, 23 parties went to Supreme Court. Okay, look, we have been seeking appointment, we are not being given appointment. Not acceptable. Even every single politician at any time of the day, the doors were open to us. And in fact, I was more kind to the opposition. And let me remind you that the opposition then was BJP. Mr. Arun Jaitley, who was originally very hostile to me because of my proximity to Sushma Swaraj ji, and they were not on best of terms then. But when he saw me totally fair, if I took 5 minutes to take a Congress party's call, I will take 1 minute to give him an appointment. And so we could see that it was changing. To my previous book, which I mentioned, the endorsement which he has sent, with a certificate that he gave, because he realized that we were very, very fair. And my own belief is that government is very powerful, they can get many things done. It is the opposition which is the underdog. And they need to be supported, we need to go out of the way. And I'll give you one interesting example of this attitude in action. Lalu ji out of power. One day he called me at 10:30 in the night, Quraishi साहब, tomorrow is counting. मेरी एक रिक्वेस्ट है, आप मेरे ये कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी में बैंकिंग एम्प्लॉयज़ जो हैं उनको ड्यूटी पे लगा दीजिए. मैंने कहा लालू जी इतने लेट नाइट में हमारे सारे इंतजाम तो तैयार हैं, सुबह 8 बजे काउंटिंग होगी. Let me try, I can't promise, but let me try. But I immediately decided that I have not given him commitment, but I'm giving commitment to myself. I'll do it whatever it takes. I immediately called up the CEO, do what you like, change from here and there. and do what he, and sure enough, the banking employee. So at least he would not be able to question the result that day. And next day evening, again at 11:30 at night, he called me. We had already obliged him the previous day. Quraishi Saab, in the election rallies, lakhs of people used to come. Now people are saying, and he was hesitant to use the word EVM. मैंने कहा लालू जी अगर आप EVM को ब्लेम करने जा रहे हैं तो मेरी एडवाइस है कि आप न कीजिएगा क्योंकि आप हार तो गए मजाक आपका और उड़ेगा. So after that he did not utter a word because we used to go out of the way to win their confidence. So that importance probably has now been lost and opposition is treated like dirt. That's not.
And one of the other arguments that Mr. Kumar made was about privacy of what he called Mata or Behnon ki privacy violate ho rahi hai. With this emphasis on when the opposition was emphasizing CCTV and visual evidence. He said, no, we cannot have this violated. How do you respond to that?
It was very, very childish response, ridiculous response. And yesterday I saw a very interesting tweet. Election Commission has released those photographs when two celebrity women are shown as voting. Now, people being shown as voting, the Prime Minister is shown as casting the vote or pressing the button. It's a normal practice. And historically, I will tell you something important. Lal Danga, who was in revolt for a good 20 years, when he came back into a democracy fold, and when he came out to vote, there was a debate in the Election Commission, I was not there before me, whether we should allow photography inside. They consciously allowed photography inside because that photograph of Lal Danga voting became the biggest statement of democracy's success in the country. So now those people voting, how is it the encroachment on the privacy of our behno or betiyo?
What do you think of the debate?
Let me also complete this. One controversy came in our time from Chennai, Tamil Nadu. In Madurai, some Muslim ladies went to court. They said that we don't want to be photographed for voter ID card. And when it came to us, we said, look, we cannot exempt you from voter card. We need identity. And after discussion, we came to a compromise. We said, look, the electronic version, digital role will be given to political parties without the photograph because photograph digitally can be morphed. But the printed copy will have their picture because they are only postage stamp size. They cannot be much, nothing can be done about them. So that was accepted by the High Court of Madras and it is still valid till today. So the privacy and what privacy?
Now everybody knows, or at least I know, that when the opposition earlier used to crib about EVMs, you never bought into that. You have always believed that the EVM is a fail-proof system of casting votes. But on this allegation or concerns about whether roles can be manipulated, what is your take?
Interestingly, I wrote an obituary of Jagdeep Chokar for New Indian Express really yesterday. And very recently he told me, and then repeated it 2-3 times, he says, for the last 15 years, he says, I've been quoting you one sentence when you said the Election Commission's soft underbelly is the electoral roll. That is our biggest weakness that we should focus on. And many leaders come to me all the time from all parties, and then I used to say, when they used to come criticizing the EVM, I said, you are barking up a wrong tree. You're wasting your time. EVM is totally dependable. Forget about it. Focus on electoral roll. Keep a watch, because election can be won and lost a year before the election through manipulation.
And it's important to say that it can impact all parties.
Yes, of course, they all do it. And in fact, this issue had come even in the time when I was in the Election Commission and Mr. Gopalaswamy was the CEC. He is a brilliant man. And we were going for a UP election. And where there were complaints and possibilities that there will be lots of bogus voters. So instead of giving this order that, any suspected person, just delete them, no. We went door to door and we made separate list of what the acronym we used was SAD, shifted, absent and dead voters. We made a list, long list. And what we did was, instead of deleting them, because they were all dead or shifted and absent, normally they deserve to be deleted. But they may not be dead. They may suddenly appear from somewhere. So even one person coming up this way will be a reflection on our efficiency. So we made separate lists and gave it to every presiding officer, apart from the normal electoral roll. From this list, if somebody comes, ठोक बजा के इनकी identity लेना. And only about 3% people came from that list. So nobody was deleted, but and in fact one very important political leader told me, कुरैशी साहब, हमने तो इतनी बोगस वोटिंग की तैयारी करने दी, तुमने एक को नहीं हमारे बोगस वोटर को घुसने दिया. Because we had other ways of controlling this, and also this intensive role.
I was just going to come to that therefore on this SIR, special intensive revision, obviously you're not going to say that the roles should not be revised. The roles will have to be periodically revised.
Yes.
But do you agree with the timing?
No, timing apart, even the concept of an intensive role, the intensive role is nowhere mentioned in the constitution or the law, because it's the discretion of the election commission.
Right.
It has been doing intensive role. Some intensive revision was done even in our time in some northeastern state. But at the same time, remember that the electoral roll has now been digitized, and about 99% of the Indians are on the voter roll after an effort of 30 years. 97 or 98% have got voter ID card after a 30-year effort. So what we did in 30 years, and you think you will do it in 30 days, you are living in, I don't know in what world. So now what we had decided over a period of time, 2003 was the last intensive roll in Bihar, that now that we have a digital roll available and digital photo card, so we don't have to go intensive, because intensive roll, you know what it means? The existing roll will go into the dustbin, and ab initio everyone will be found. Now what took us 30 years to put everybody on the roll, now doing it in 30 days is almost impossible. What we had decided, and we have practiced all these 20 years, that we will do summary revision. And what is summary revision? 99% people are already on the roll. We'll again come door to door. We'll come to your house, Barkha, this is a roll, and in your family we see 5 voters last year. Tell us in this year, has there been any addition? Somebody has become 18, or somebody has come from outside to live here, or somebody has gone out or whatever, and we update it. This is how we verify. It has been working beautifully. Same role from which this 2024 general elections were held and this current government was formed were valid yesterday and invalid today. In January of this year, the same voter rolls were valid, and suddenly they become invalid. And there is, we have been talking of Nepal. After my article in the Indian Express, somebody, the former ambassador to Nepal, wrote to me a very shocking letter. He says, sir, you don't realize a very serious implication that since we have an open border with Nepal, so all the time the millions of Indians are traveling earlier with Aadhaar card and photo card and passport. I have traveled to Nepal every time with a voter card. Now earlier when Aadhaar became controversial, they banned it. Now that EPIC has been declared invalid by our own election commission, Nepal will be fully justified in saying that we will not accept EPIC anymore. Bring your passport. And how many people in UP, Bihar and Uttarakhand will have passport? Not even 0.5%. So what inconvenience, unconscious, unwitting, surely not
intentional.
But it should have been thought through. You know, these big measures have to be taken with the great consultation. Because that is the problem when you don't consult. And you think you know everything, and suddenly you think you will do it. So I have written in my book that I used to think I'm the brightest man, but my 2 colleagues always were moderating me and were giving a viewpoint and which made me appear.
I want to end actually with something that is the subject of one of your other books, but I think no conversation with you should be would be complete without it. When we talk about democracy, we also talk about demographics. And one of the big political debates around demography has been the rhetoric in some quarters around rising Muslim population numbers. And I know that you have a whole book on the subject where you painstakingly researched, used hard facts to question the myths, the most common myths around this. The most common myth being that, oh, Muslims are going to overtake Hindus in India. And I just want to end this conversation, since it is about democracy. We must also talk about demographics. with what your research found?
Well, my research also, which by the way lasted 25 years.
Yeah.
And it used only government data.
Yes.
National Family Health Surveys 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, census data, NSS and everything. And we found that, of course, Muslims had the highest rate of population growth. But for the last 30 years, situation had reversed, and they were accepting family planning, adopting family planning faster than all communities. And as a result, and earlier impression when I started in 95, like you and everybody, that if Hindus have 2 children, Muslims have 10 children. That was not the case. Even at the best of times, the worst of times, the gap was only 1 child. And since Muslims are adopting family planning faster, the gap has come down to 0.3. And the factor, what we found was basically literacy.
Yeah.
The higher the literacy, lesser the number of children. Higher the income, lesser the number of children. And
Which is why Muslims in Kerala, for example, will have a different fertility rate than, let's say, Muslims in some other part of the country.
Correct. And better the service delivery, lesser the children. We found that Muslims were lagging in all 3. We have never heard these people who criticize Muslims talking about Muslim education. If at all, where some education was being imparted, like madrasa has been given a bad name and tarnished black, although it is educating people where there were no schools, poverty. Instead of talking of improving their economic condition, they are talking of economic boycott. Don't buy sabzi from that and don't take the rickshaw of a Muslim. Service delivery, since the Muslim clusters, which I have heard many times being called as mini Pakistan, no doctor and no nurse wants to be posted in mini Pakistan. And without a doctor and nurse, how will anybody do family planning? Despite that, Muslims adopted family planning in a big way. Also, one finding is that Islam is not against family planning. That is what I have argued. But sterilization from all international ulama, it is forbidden because you are tinkering with the body. Despite that, 20% Muslims have even undergone sterilization. So the way, and as you mentioned, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, if that was the case, Bihar, Hindus have 3.11 TFR, total fertility rate. Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Andhra, Muslims have 1.5. So if religion was a factor, everywhere Muslim fertility will be very high. So since Bihar and UP are backward for Hindus and Muslims, everybody, that is why the fertility of all communities in these 3-4 states, Hindi speaking states, is high. So, and in fact, by the way, one interesting anecdote. One thing we have heard a leader say that hum 5 hamare 25, hum 4 hamare 40. I had when I first met Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, I gave him my book.
I was just going to ask you that did you, in your meetings that you all had with the RSS chief, did you bring this up?
I gave him that book. And there is also a small booklet based on my PowerPoint presentation, which is the title, Will Muslims Overtake the Hindu? So I told him, this is a myth and this cannot happen because hum 5 hamare 25 is wrong because polygamy in India, वो तो संभव ही नहीं है. कहने लगे वो कैसे? मैंने कहा औरतें ही नहीं है. कहने लगे क्या मतलब?
Sex ratio is skewed.
देखिए sex ratio 120 साल में the best sex ratio 2011 में is 940, which means 1000 में से 60 मर्दों को पहली बीवी नहीं मिलेगी तो मुझको दूसरी कहाँ से मिलेगी? तो भाग बता बैठे hearty laugh on that. The critics of our meeting said कि आप उनके laughter से impress हो गए. But I said, that laughter indicates that he understood what I'm saying. Fully understood.
And you do acknowledge that the population has gone up by what, about 4%
in 60 years.
In 60 years, but that it's now sharply coming down. The rate of sort of its decline is very fast now, or very steep. And that this statistically, it is not possible that Muslims will ever overtake.
Good. You read that point. Now, it has gone 4 percentage points from 9.8 to 14.2 in 60 years, right? So, which means to become 51%, we require 600 years. And the propaganda was that they are coming in 2029, there will be a Muslim prime minister. Therefore, do a genocide. Those are the kind of calls which are made. I got in touch with my friend, Professor Dinesh Singh, Vice Chancellor of Delhi University, great mathematician. I said, Dinesh bhai, this is my data of the last 60 years. Can you do a mathematical model for me? How soon will the Muslims overtake the Hindus? And he along with Professor Ajay Kumar, they did a study, mathematical model, which is published there, that never. He said, Bhaijan, bhul jaiye, not even for 1,000 years, in fact, ever, you cannot, because, and you will see the graph, Muslim graph going like this, Hindu graph going like that. He says, does it show that Muslims are overtaking? No, there is no question of it all. Mathematical model by Dinesh Singh, who is not my cousin.
So I want to end by asking you, what made you meet Mohan Bhagwat?
Well, good point, very good point. Actually, 3, 4 of us, 5 of us.
So Najib Jung, Shahid Siddiqui, General Zamiruddin Shah and Salim Sherwani. And yourself.
Yes, 5 of us.
Yes.
We were discussing what was happening every day. We open the newspaper, we see some lynching here, lynching there. So we were concerned and we thought we should bring to his notice our concern. So we sent him an email, okay, look, you keep coming to Delhi. Next time you come, please give us time. We want to meet you. He immediately gave us a date 20 days later, 10 o'clock in his headquarters in Delhi. On the dot of 10, he entered. We were impressed. The modesty of his room was very impressive. He's a great listener. For 1 hour, he gave us an opportunity, all 5 of us, to express our thing, and then he came out with the answer. So, and he said some very useful thing. First of all, one concern was what will be the state of Muslims in Hindu Rashtra. He says, हम मुसलमान के बिना हिंदू राष्ट्र की कल्पना भी नहीं कर सकते. Now, and all the positives in harmony and everything, and he says कि मैंने तो ये statement दिया था कि हर मस्जिद के नीचे शिवलिंग न ढूंढो, which is very true. And in fact, he even went to a madrasa, he went to a masjid for the first time ever, and talked to them, and he realized कि वहाँ तो कोई terrorist factory कोई नहीं है. So because the information gap. So he has been very consistent in what he is saying. I even attended a 3-day convention in Delhi. Everything he said was conciliatory, that Islam has been there for 1100 years and will always be here. Now, these are positive. Only one thing which has now ruffled the feathers of Muslim community, in answer to a question on the 3rd day about Mathura, Kashi, he said, look, Sangh is not getting involved in it at all. We were involved in Ayodhya though, we are not involved at all. However, if our cadres want to take it up, we won't stop them. Now, we are disturbed that this might even be a signal to them to take over. So, we will do nothing, if you want to. So, whether this was just a permission or a provocation for them to come to the field, so that is something.
But your dialogue is ongoing with the RSS.
The dialogue is ongoing, and we feel it is very, very positive, because he had told us in the first meeting that there are 2 things Hindus are concerned, that we hate to be called kafir, and secondly, we were always a Hindu Rashtra, we will always be, and cow slaughter is something we are very concerned about. Our answer, that he had already explained that Hindu Rashtra is not complete without the Muslim. We say cow slaughter, you have banned it in most of the country, most of the states, so please enforce it. We don't take beef. I have never taken beef in my life, because having grown up among Hindu friends, somebody asks me for my food preference when I go abroad, automatically no pork, no beef. So enforce it, is in your hand. Secondly, the kafir. Although kafir actually means an Arabic word for a non-believer. My belief is that there is Allah and there is a Muhammad. You don't believe it, and therefore you are a non-believer, which is the Arabic is kafir. But if it has become an abusive word, wrongly though, so we should avoid using it. We should use some other word, no problem. Then we said, look, as a counter, that your people are also calling us all the time, what is that? Jihadi. We say, or Pakistani. We hate it. Even a 3-year-old child is described as Pakistani by his or her 3-year-old friend. They don't even know what Pakistan is. So that kind of thing. So he says it hurts us also. He said that is also very bad, and we should stop it, and we should tell our cadres to. So this dialogue is very, very good. He kept on repeating in all of the 3-4 meetings we've had. He said, this is a 100-year-old plant, and it will take time. It will take time. It will take time. In fact, one of the leaders made a very significant statement. When I told him, look, a 3-year-old child calling the classmate as Pakistani, he says, भैया इसमें टाइम लगेगा, हम ही ने तो ये चीज सिखाई थी उनको, तो हम एकदम U-turn तो नहीं ले सकते.
I will say this, that, in America, we've just seen the assassination on a university campus of a Trump ally. उससे मुझे सिर्फ ये चीज कहनी है that long may we as Indians talk across differences of opinion. So I think it's very admirable that all of you did this dialogue with the RSS and that they also did it with you.
Very good. Yes.
Because you have to talk through your differences.
To talk, exactly. If
There's no other way.
There's no other way.
There is no other way.
There was many things which we brought to the notice, and I'm very happy to say it may be my wishful thinking.
Yeah.
In his last Vijay Dashmi address, talking of population, he did not say that Muslims are overpopulating the country. He did talk of population. He talked of a historical context that 75 years ago, because of population, the partition was done. And he talked of partition of Indonesia into East Timor, Sudan and South Sudan, and in Yugoslavia, I think Kosovo or something. All three, in a way, irrelevant examples, because none of them, Islam is the beneficiary, because they were all breakaways from Islamic state to a Christian state.
Well, all I can say, Quraishi Saab, is that you're a prolific author and a committed sort of champion of democracy, and all our democracies, with their good and their bad and their indifferent, need voices like yours. S.Y. Quraishi's new book, Democracy's Heartland, Inside the Battle for Power in South Asia, if you're interested in the region, in your own country, in politics, in contemporary history, I think this is the book for you. Thank you, Quraishi.
Thank you so much.